What is going on, folks? My name here is Magardo, and I keep seeing this argument on social media regarding the whole Black Lives Matter movement, regarding police brutality. People are saying that white people are more affected by police brutality than black people or African Americans are. And whenever I see that, I see one of these graphs, just like this one, posted up along with, with their argument. They say, well, see, white people have more cases of police brutality than that of black or African American people. And whenever you look at the graph and you do look at the number of cases, yes, that's true. White people do have more cases of police brutality than black people. But in this video, I want to argue against that. I want to show a point. I want to show some facts. I want to put some facts out here showing that black people are actually more at risk for police brutality when compared to that of white people. I'm not going to be going over any other race. This is strictly African Americans with white people, right? I'm only going to be comparing those two, and I'm going to show you that African Americans are in fact more at risk for police brutality than that of white people. Now, when we look at this graph that I've pulled up on screen, this graph is actually some statistics taken from 2013 up to 2019. It shows the number of victims of police brutality in correlation with their race. And the thing is, if you look at the graph, it does appear as if white people suffer from police brutality more so than black people. But that's not necessarily the case, because there's other factors that need to be taken into account. Whenever you look at victims per million people, we can see that African Americans have a much higher number than any other race on this list. Now, I know some people out there will say, well, what does that have to do with anything, right? There is still more cases of police brutality with white people than there are with black people. And you are correct. Whenever you look at this graph, you are indeed correct. There is still more cases. But if we look at the individual population of white people and of African Americans, I'm not going to be going over any of the other races because I only see the argument between white people and African Americans whenever it comes to this debate. If we think of their individual population, then we can see that African Americans are actually at a much higher risk than that of white people. So if we get the total population of the United States, there is over 328 million people in the U.S. Now, this is from the U.S. Census Bureau, so this is, very good, factual information here that they are giving out. There is over 328 million people in the United States. Okay, now if we take into account the percentage of race, we see here that 76.5% of Americans are white. So if we do the math, we see that there is over 251 million white Americans. Now, when we look down here, we see 13.4% is black or African American. If we do the math, we get to see here that there is almost 44 million African Americans living within the United States. So now that we got the individual populations out of the way, right, what I want to do now is I want to find the exact percentage of white people and black people that are affected by police brutality in correlation with their individual population. So now what we are going to do is we are going to find the exact percentage of cases in correlation with police brutality and race. So earlier, I stated there is over 251 million white Americans, right? So if we look at that number and we look at the number of victims, which is 3,378, we do a little bit of math, we can convert that into a percentage. So the percentage of white people being affected by police brutality within white race, we see that 0.001345% of white people is affected by police brutality. So now we're going to look at African Americans. The number that I ended up getting for African Americans within the United States was 43,984,096, which is roughly 13.4% of the population. So if we look at the number of victims in correlation with African Americans in relation with police brutality, we see that there is a total of 1,944 black or African Americans being victims of police brutality. So now what we do is we do a little bit of math. We see that 0.00442% of African Americans are actually affected by police brutality. So now if we compare the percentage of black people being affected by police brutality and the percentage of white people being affected by police brutality within their, own separate population, we see that black people is actually more affected by police brutality than that of white people. Now, I understand that these numbers ain't, 100% factual. And the reason for that is basically because population can increase and decrease, right? So I'm not going to say that these numbers are, 100% correct. But either way, though, this is supposed to be a rough estimate. And within that rough estimate, we can still see that the numbers of police brutality is actually much higher for that of black people than that of white people. Anyways, though, thank you all for tuning into this video. I really appreciated having you guys. If you guys enjoyed it, please, hit that like button. It would be super greatly appreciated. I just wanted to make this video just to, show some kind of support in some way of, the whole Black Lives Matter movement. I want to show my support in some way, and I feel like this video can actually show some support for it, because I'm constantly seeing people argue on social media that white people are more affected by police brutality than that of African Americans, and I figured this would be a good way to show some support with that by providing some, evidence that that's not necessarily the case. Anyways, though, thank you all for tuning into this. I appreciate having you guys. Stay beautiful, be amazing, stay amazing, everybody. I'll see you all in the next one.